The smell of burnt metal and smoke still hung in the air as Captain Marcus Reed walked through the wreckage of Proxima Station. His boots crunched on broken glass and twisted debris that had once been the proud headquarters of the Galactic Coalition. 5 years of war had finally come to an end, and humanity had won against all odds. Marcus paused at what used to be the main command center. Massive screens that once displayed star maps and battle formations now lay shattered on the floor. The Coalition had never expected humans to fight back this hard. They thought Earth was just another primitive world to be conquered and controlled. They were wrong. The Third Colonial War had started when the Coalition decided that humans were spreading too fast across the galaxy. They called humans a threat to galactic peace and order. Marcus remembered the day the first Coalition ships appeared over Earth. He had been a young lieutenant then, fresh out of the academy and full of dreams about exploring the stars. Those dreams died quickly when the bombs started falling. Now he stood as Earth's most decorated war hero. His uniform carried more medals than he cared to count. Each one represented a battle won, a world saved, or friends lost along the way. The war had cost humanity dearly, but they had survived. More than that, they had triumphed. A voice called out behind him. "Captain Reed, the general wants to see you." Marcus turned to see Lieutenant Parker approaching. The young man looked tired, like everyone else after 5 years of constant fighting. Parker had lost his left arm in the Battle of Kepler Station, but he still served with the same dedication as before. "What does Hayes want now?" Marcus asked as they walked toward the temporary command post. "Big ceremony today. Something about rewards for the top officers. You know how the brass loves their parades." Marcus nodded but said nothing. He had attended too many ceremonies already. Most of them were for fallen comrades who would never see Earth again. The living got medals, but the dead got remembered. Sometimes Marcus wondered which was better. They entered the command post, a hastily constructed building made from salvaged Coalition materials. General Hayes stood behind a metal desk, reviewing reports on a portable screen. The old man had aged 10 years during the war. His hair had gone completely gray, and deep lines marked his face. "Marcus, good to see you," Hayes said without looking up. "Take a seat. We need to talk." Marcus sat in the uncomfortable metal chair across from the desk. Hayes finally looked up and smiled, but it was a tired smile of a man who had seen too much death. "The war is over, Marcus. Really over. The Coalition Council has officially surrendered. They're disbanding their military and returning to their home worlds." "That's good news, sir." "Yes, it is. And now we need to figure out what comes next." The Coalition left behind a lot of assets. Weapons, ships, technology, and personnel. Earth Command has decided to distribute these assets among our top officers as rewards for their service. Marcus shifted in his chair. He had never fought for rewards or prizes. The war had been about survival, about protecting Earth and the colonies from destruction. But he knew better than to argue with the brass about politics. "What kind of assets, sir?" Hayes pulled up a file on his screen. "Various things. Some officers are getting ships. Others are receiving advanced technology. You're getting something special, Marcus. Something unique." The general stood and walked to a sealed door at the back of the room. He pressed his hand against the scanner, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. Beyond the door was a corridor that Marcus had never seen before. "Follow me," Hayes said. They walked down the corridor in silence. The walls were lined with heavy security doors, each one marked with Coalition symbols. This was where they kept the high-value prisoners, the ones too important to send to regular detention facilities. The Coalition had some very advanced species working for them, Hayes explained as they walked. Most of them have been repatriated to their home worlds as part of the surrender agreement, but some were involved in activities that we consider war crimes. They can't go home yet. They stopped at a door marked with red warning symbols. Hayes placed his hand on another scanner, and this door also slid open. Inside was a small observation room with a large window looking into a detention cell. Marcus looked through the window and felt his breath catch in his throat. Inside the cell was a being unlike anything he had ever seen. She was tall and slender, with pale skin that seemed to glow with its own inner light. Her hair was long and silver, floating slightly as if she were underwater. She wore simple gray clothing that looked more like a hospital gown than a prison uniform. But what caught Marcus's attention most were the energy shackles around her wrists and ankles. They pulsed with a blue light that seemed to drain the color from her skin. She sat on a simple metal bench, staring at the floor with eyes that held too much sadness. "Her name is Lyra," Hayes said quietly. "She's an ethereal, one of the most advanced species in the Coalition. They have natural telepathic abilities and can process information faster than any computer we've ever built. The Coalition used her as a strategic analyst. She helped plan attacks against our colonies." Marcus stared at the alien woman. She looked so fragile, so broken. It was hard to imagine her planning military operations that had cost human lives. "What's she doing here?" "She's your reward, Marcus. Earth Command has decided that our top officers should each receive a high-value Coalition asset. You're getting her." Marcus turned away from the window. "Sir, I don't understand. What am I supposed to do with a prisoner?" Hayes shrugged. "That's up to you. Some officers are using their assets as servants. Others are interrogating them for information about Coalition technology. A few are just keeping them as trophies. The choice is yours." "Trophies?" Marcus felt sick to his stomach. "Sir, we're talking about sentient beings here, not objects. They're former enemies, Marcus. They helped kill our people. The fact that we're keeping them alive at all is more mercy than they showed us." Marcus looked back through the window. Lyra had raised her head and was staring directly at him. Her eyes were a deep purple color, unlike anything human. For a moment, he felt as if she could see right through him, into his very soul. Then she looked away, back to the floor. "The energy shackles suppress her telepathic abilities," Hayes continued. "She can't read your thoughts or influence your mind while she's wearing them. She's completely harmless. And she's mine. That's right. Your reward for 5 years of exemplary service. She'll be transferred to your quarters tomorrow morning. You'll have full authority over her care and treatment within the bounds of the military code, of course." Marcus said nothing. He continued to stare at the alien woman through the window. She looked so alone, so defeated. Whatever she had done during the war, she was still a living being. The idea of owning another person, even an alien person, felt wrong to him. "Sir, what if I don't want this reward?" Hayes frowned. "Don't want it? Marcus, do you know how valuable she is? The intelligence she could provide, the technology she understands? Other officers would kill for this opportunity. Then give her to one of them." "No, the decision has already been made. The paperwork is filed, and the transfer orders are signed. She's yours, Marcus. What you do with her is your business, but you can't give her back." Hayes headed toward the door. "Your transport leaves for Earth in 3 days. Make arrangements to bring your asset with you. And Marcus, congratulations. You've earned this." The general left, and Marcus stood alone in the observation room. Through the window, he could see Lyra still sitting on her bench. She seemed so small and fragile despite her tall frame. The energy shackles made soft humming sounds as they drained her natural abilities. Marcus had fought in dozens of battles during the war. He had killed enemy soldiers, destroyed their ships, and conquered their worlds. But he had always told himself that he was fighting for freedom, for the right of humans to exist as equals in the galaxy. Now he was being asked to become the very thing he had fought against, a captor, an owner of another being. He placed his hand against the window. The glass was cold against his palm. Inside the cell, Lyra looked up again. This time she didn't look away. Her purple eyes met his brown ones, and for a moment neither of them moved. Marcus saw something in those eyes that he recognized. It was the same look he had seen in the mirror after every battle, after every friend lost, after every world burned. It was a look of someone who had seen too much, lost too much, and was trying to hold on to whatever humanity they had left. Tomorrow she would be his responsibility, the war hero and his alien prize. But as Marcus looked at Lyra through the cold glass, he made a decision that would change both their lives forever. He would not be her owner. He would not treat her as a trophy or a servant or an object to be used. He didn't know what he would do instead, but he knew what he wouldn't do. The war was over. It was time to start acting like the civilized species humans claim to be. It was time to choose compassion over conquest, understanding over hatred. Marcus took one last look at Lyra, then turned and walked away. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But for the first time in 5 years, he felt something other than the weight of war on his shoulders. He felt hope. Marcus stood in his quarters the next morning, waiting for the guards to bring Lyra. His hands were sweating, and he wiped them on his uniform pants for the third time. He had spent most of the night thinking about what he would say to her, how he would explain what he planned to do. The door chimed, and 2 security guards entered with Lyra between them. The energy shackles still glowed blue around her wrists and ankles, and she moved slowly as if each step caused her pain. Her silver hair hung loose around her face, hiding her purple eyes from view. "Prisoner transfer complete, sir," said Sergeant Mills, the older of the 2 guards. "She's all yours now. The control device for her shackles is on your desk, along with the instruction manual." Marcus looked at the small black device sitting next to his computer. It had several buttons and a small screen that showed Lyra's vital signs in green numbers. The thought of controlling another being with such a device made his stomach turn. "Any special instructions?" Marcus asked, though he already knew he wouldn't follow them. "Standard prisoner protocols, sir. She gets 2 meals a day, supervised bathroom breaks, and 8 hours of sleep. The shackles should stay on at all times. If she gives you any trouble, just press the red button and she'll be unconscious in seconds." The guards left, and Marcus found himself alone with Lyra for the first time. She stood in the middle of his quarters, not moving, not speaking. Her head was still down, and he could see the exhaustion in every line of her body. "Please, sit down," Marcus said, gesturing to the couch near the window. Lyra didn't move. She seemed to be waiting for something, perhaps for him to give her a direct order or to activate the punishment settings on her shackles. Marcus realized she had probably been conditioned to expect the worst from her captors. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said quietly. "You can sit wherever you're comfortable." Still no movement. Marcus walked over to his desk and picked up the control device. Lyra tensed immediately, raising her head to look at him for the first time since entering his quarters. Her purple eyes were wide with fear, and he could see her hands trembling. Marcus held up the device so she could see it clearly. Then he walked to the nearest disposal chute and dropped it inside. The sound of it being incinerated echoed through the room. Lyra stared at the disposal chute in shock. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. She looked back at Marcus, as if he had just performed some kind of magic trick. "I don't need a control device," Marcus said. "I'm not your owner, and you're not my prisoner. Not anymore." He moved slowly toward her, careful not to make any sudden movements that might frighten her. When he was close enough, he knelt down in front of her shackled wrists. Lyra pulled back instinctively, but Marcus held up his hands to show he meant no harm. "These shackles hurt you, don't they?" he asked. Lyra nodded slowly, still watching him with suspicion. Marcus had read the technical specifications the night before. The energy shackles didn't just suppress telepathic abilities. They caused constant low-level pain to ensure compliance. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a small electronic tool. He had borrowed it from the engineering bay that morning, claiming he needed to repair some equipment in his quarters. The tool was designed to disable energy restraints in case of emergencies. "This might hurt for a moment when they come off," he warned her. He pressed the tool against the first shackle around her right wrist. There was a brief flash of light, and the device sparked and fell to the floor. Lyra gasped and pulled her hand back, staring at her freed wrist in amazement. Marcus quickly removed the other 3 shackles. Each time, Lyra flinched as if expecting to be punished for allowing him to free her. When the last shackle fell away, she collapsed onto the couch, her whole body shaking. "Why?" she whispered. It was the first word she had spoken to him. "Because it was the right thing to do," Marcus replied. "Because you're not a thing to be owned." Lyra touched her wrist where the shackles had been. The skin was pale and marked with small burns from the energy fields. She flexed her fingers, and Marcus noticed a faint shimmer in the air around her hands as her natural abilities began to return. "You don't understand," she said, her voice stronger now. "They told you I was dangerous." They told you I helped kill your people. Did you? Lyra was quiet for a long moment. Yes, I analyzed your military strategies. I found weaknesses in your defenses. I helped plan attacks that killed humans. Marcus sat down in the chair across from her. Why? Because I had no choice. My people were conquered by the Coalition long before your war began. We were slaves, though they called us citizens, when they discovered my analytical abilities. They forced me to serve in their military intelligence division. If I refused, they would have killed my family. She looked out the window at the stars beyond. I never wanted to fight anyone. Before the war, I was a scholar. I studied ancient art and philosophy. I wrote poetry about the beauty of distant worlds. But the Coalition only saw me as a tool to be used. Marcus felt a weight settling in his chest. The Coalition had portrayed themselves as the civilized rulers of the galaxy, bringing order to chaos. But if what Lyra said was true, they were no different from any other empire built on the suffering of conquered peoples. What happened to your family? Dead, she said simply. Killed during one of your raids on Vega Prime. The irony is not lost on me. I helped plan attacks against humans. Then humans destroyed everything I was trying to protect. The silence stretched between them. Marcus didn't know what to say. How do you apologize for a war? How do you comfort someone who has lost everything? I'm sorry, he said finally. Lyra looked at him with surprise. You're sorry? You won the war. You're the hero. I'm the enemy who's supposed to be grateful that you let me live. You're not my enemy, Marcus said. You were forced to fight just like I was. The only difference is that I was fighting to protect my home, and you were fighting to protect your family. I can't blame you for that. Lyra stared at him for a long time. Marcus could see her mind working, trying to understand why he was treating her with kindness instead of the cruelty she had been conditioned to expect. What do you want from me? She asked finally. Nothing. I want you to rest, to heal, to figure out what you want to do with your life now that the war is over. I don't understand. Everyone wants something. The Coalition wanted my mind. The other officers want information or service or entertainment. What do you want? Marcus thought about the question. What did he want? He wanted the war to be truly over, not just the fighting, but the hatred and fear that had driven it. He wanted to believe that different species could coexist without one dominating the other. He wanted to prove that humans could be better than their enemies had been. I want to show you that not all humans are monsters, he said. I want you to know that you're safe here. And maybe, if you're willing, I'd like to learn about your people and your culture, not for military intelligence, but just because I'm curious about the galaxy beyond Earth. Lyra was quiet again. She flexed her fingers, and Marcus saw that shimmer in the air again. He realized she was probably reading his thoughts, checking to see if he was telling the truth. You really mean it, she said with wonder in her voice. You're not lying or trying to manipulate me. You actually want to help me. Yes. But why? I'm your enemy. I helped kill your friends, your fellow soldiers. Marcus stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the ruins of the Coalition station being dismantled by human salvage crews. Soon there would be nothing left to show that a galactic empire had once ruled from this place. Because the war is over, he said, and if we keep treating each other as enemies, it will never really be over. Someone has to be the first to choose forgiveness over revenge. He turned back to face her. Besides, you weren't really my enemy. You were just another casualty of a war that neither of us wanted. Lyra stood up slowly, testing her balance without the weight of the energy shackles. She walked to the window and stood beside Marcus, looking out at the stars. My home world is out there somewhere, she said quietly. Altara in the Veil Nebula. It is floating cities built among crystal forests that sing in the wind. I haven't seen it in 10 years. Maybe someday you can go home. Maybe, if there's anything left to go home to. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the salvage crews work. Marcus noticed that Lyra's skin had regained some of its natural glow now that the shackles were gone. She looked more alive, more like the person she had been before the war broke her. Thank you, she said suddenly. For what? For treating me like a person instead of a thing. It's been so long since anyone has shown me kindness that I have forgotten what it felt like. Marcus smiled, and for the first time since the war began, it felt genuine. You don't have to thank me for basic decency. In my experience, basic decency is rarer than you might think. She was right, Marcus realized. The war had made monsters of them all in one way or another, but maybe it was possible to find their way back to being human again. Maybe it was possible to choose compassion over cruelty, understanding over hatred. It would be a start. 3 weeks had passed since Marcus freed Lyra from her shackles, and their daily routine had settled into something surprisingly comfortable. Each morning, Marcus would wake to find Lyra already awake, sitting by the window and watching the stars. She needed less sleep than humans, and she told him that watching the distant suns reminded her of home. Marcus had given her access to his personal library, a collection of books and files he had gathered over the years. At first, she had been hesitant to touch anything, afraid she might be punished for showing curiosity. But as days passed, she began to explore human literature with the enthusiasm of someone who had been starved for intellectual stimulation. "Your Shakespeare is fascinating," Lyra said one morning as Marcus prepared his breakfast. "The way he writes about love and loss, it's very similar to the poets of my world. I didn't expect humans to understand such complex emotions." Marcus paused in his coffee preparation. "What did you expect from us?" "The Coalition taught us that humans were primitive warriors. They said you only understood violence and conquest. They showed us recordings of your wars, your weapons, your destruction of environments. We were told that if humans ever gained power in the galaxy, they would enslave or destroy every other species." She picked up a book of human poetry from the table beside her chair. "But this speaks of beauty, of wonder of the natural world, of deep feelings that transcend individual survival. These are not the words of mindless conquerors." Marcus brought his coffee to the table and sat across from her. Over the past weeks, he had learned that Lyra was incredibly intelligent, far beyond anything he had imagined. She could process information at speeds that seemed impossible, understanding complex concepts after reading them only once. But more than that, she had a deep appreciation for art and philosophy that reminded him of the university professors he had known before the war. "Tell me about your world," Marcus said. "What was it like before the Coalition took control?" Lyra's eyes grew distant, and that familiar shimmer appeared around her hands. Marcus had learned that this happened when she was accessing deep memories or processing complex thoughts. Her telepathic abilities were slowly returning to full strength, though she was careful never to read his mind without permission. "Altara was beautiful beyond description," she began. "Our cities floated among the branches of crystal trees that grew thousands of meters tall. The trees would sing when the wind passed through them, creating music that could be heard across entire continents. We had no ground-based transportation because we lived in harmony with the forest canopy." She gestured with her hands, and Marcus saw faint images forming in the air above her palms. It was one of her abilities, projecting memories and thoughts as visual displays. The images showed impossible spires of living crystal reaching toward purple skies, with graceful structures suspended between them like jewels in a spider's web. "We were scholars and artists," Lyra continued. "Our society valued knowledge and creativity above all else. We had no military because we saw no need for one. When the Coalition arrived, we welcomed them as visitors from distant stars. We wanted to learn about their cultures, to share our art and philosophy with them." The images above her hand shifted, showing Coalition warships descending from the sky like dark clouds. The crystal trees began to dim, their music fading to silence. They studied us for months, learning about our abilities, our technology, our social structures. Then one day, they announced that Altara was now part of the Coalition. Anyone who resisted would be eliminated. Our leaders tried to negotiate to find a peaceful solution. They were executed publicly as an example to the rest of us. Marcus watched the images with growing horror. He saw ethereals being forced into work camps, their natural glow fading as their spirits were broken. Children were separated from their parents and taken to training facilities where they would be conditioned to serve the Coalition's needs. How long ago was this? 47 years. I was just a child when they came. I spent most of my life as their slave, though they called it citizenship. The only reason I survived was because my telepathic abilities were useful to them. The images faded, and Lyra looked down at her hands. I used to dream of my homeworld every night. The singing trees, the floating cities, the festivals where we would share our latest artistic creations. But after the war began, even my dreams turned dark. I stopped remembering the beauty and only remember the destruction. Marcus reached across the table and gently touched her hand. I'm sorry. I had no idea the Coalition was doing things like that to other species. How could you? They were very careful to present themselves as benevolent rulers. They told each species that the others had willingly joined their empire. We never knew that every world had been conquered through force or deception until near the end of the war, when their control began to break down. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Marcus was beginning to understand that the war had been far more complex than he had realized. Humanity had fought for their freedom, but they had also inadvertently freed dozens of other species from Coalition oppression. Can I ask you something? Lyra said suddenly. Of course. Why did you become a soldier? You don't seem like someone who enjoys violence. Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. I didn't have much choice. When the Coalition attacked Earth, every able-bodied person was drafted into the military. I was studying engineering at university when the bombs started falling. One day I was designing bridges, and the next day I was learning how to destroy enemy ships. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the salvage crews still working on the station wreckage. I was good at it, unfortunately. I had a talent for understanding enemy tactics and finding ways to counter them. The more successful I became, the more responsibility they gave me. Before I knew it, I was a captain leading major operations. Do you regret it? Marcus considered the question carefully. I regret the necessity of it. I regret every person who died, human or alien, but I don't regret fighting to protect Earth and the colonies. If we hadn't fought back, humanity would have been enslaved just like your people were. The Coalition made a mistake when they attacked you, Lyra said quietly. They assumed humans would surrender quickly like most other species did. They didn't understand that you would fight to the death rather than submit to conquest. Is that what made the difference? Our refusal to give up? Lyra nodded. That and your adaptability. Other species that resisted the Coalition used the same tactics over and over, making them predictable. But humans constantly change their approach. Every time we thought we understood your strategy, you would do something completely unexpected. She smiled slightly, and Marcus realized it was the first time he had seen her look genuinely happy since she arrived. I spent years trying to analyze human military thinking, and I never could predict what you would do next. It was frustrating and terrifying, but also fascinating. Your species has a creativity in warfare that I've never seen before. I'm not sure that's something to be proud of. Perhaps not. But it's also the same creativity that produces your art and literature. The mind that can find new ways to solve problems in battle can also find new ways to express beauty and truth. They're not separate abilities. They're different applications of the same gift. Marcus returned to his seat, struck by her insight. Is that how your people see things? Are all abilities connected? On Altara, we believe that all forms of intelligence were part of a greater whole. A poet and an engineer and a philosopher were all exploring different aspects of the same universal truth. That's why the Coalition's use of our abilities was so painful. They took our gift for understanding and forced us to use it for destruction. Marcus suddenly felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. The room seemed to shimmer around the edges, and he could hear something like distant music. Then it was gone, leaving him slightly disoriented. I'm sorry, Lyra said quickly. I didn't mean to do that. Sometimes when I get emotional, my abilities affect the space around me. What did I just experience? An echo of how my people perceive reality. We don't just think about concepts. We experience them as living things. When I spoke about the connection between all forms of intelligence, you felt what I was feeling. Marcus rubbed his temples, trying to process the strange sensation. That was incredible. Is that how you normally see the world? Yes. Everything is connected to everything else. Thoughts have texture and color. Emotions create patterns in the air. It's why the energy shackles were so horrible. They cut me off from that deeper perception and left me feeling blind and deaf. She hesitated, then asked, "Would you like me to show you more? I can share my memories of Altara as I actually experience them, not just as visual images." Marcus looked at her uncertainly. The brief contact had been overwhelming, and he wasn't sure he could handle more. But he was also deeply curious about her world and her way of seeing reality. Is it safe? Perfectly safe. I'll be very gentle, and I'll stop immediately if you're uncomfortable. Marcus nodded, and Lyra reached across the table to touch his hand again. This time, the contact was deliberate and controlled. The world around him faded, replaced by something beyond description. He was standing in a crystal forest under purple skies, but he could feel the consciousness of the trees around him. Their song wasn't just sound. It was pure emotion given form, washing over him in waves of joy and peace. Above him, the floating cities weren't just structures. They were living art, shaped by the collective dreams of their inhabitants. He could sense other ethereals moving to the forest, their thoughts creating visible trails of light in the air. Everything was connected. Everything was alive. Everything was part of a vast symphony of existence that made him want to weep with its beauty. Then he was back in his quarters, gasping for breath. Lyra was watching him with concern, her hand still touching his. "Are you all right?" Marcus nodded, though he felt fundamentally changed by the experience. "That was your world. That was my world. No wonder you were willing to do anything to protect it." For the first time since he had known her, Lyra smiled with genuine warmth. "Thank you for understanding." Marcus woke to the sound of angry voices outside his quarters. The chronometer on his wall showed it was barely dawn, station time. He sat up quickly, immediately noticing that Lyra was not in her usual spot by the window. Instead, she was pressed against the far wall, her skin pale with fear. "What's happening?" he asked quietly. "3 officers are coming," she whispered. "I can sense their thoughts from here. They're very angry about something." Before Marcus could respond, the door chimed aggressively. When he didn't answer immediately, it chimed again, longer and more insistent. Marcus grabbed his uniform jacket and walked to the door, pressing the entry button. Captain Torres entered first, followed by Major Phillips and Colonel Blake. Torres had been Marcus's friend before the war, but the years of fighting had changed him. His face was harder now, his eyes colder. Phillips was known throughout the fleet as a man who believed aliens were inferior to humans. Blake was the station's intelligence chief, a woman who trusted no one and questioned everything. "Marcus," Torres said without greeting, "we need to talk." "About what?" "About your pet alien," Phillips said, pointing at Lyra. "Word is getting around that you've been treating her like a guest instead of prisoner." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "How I treat my assigned asset is my business. Not when it affects fleet security," Blake interrupted. She pulled out a portable scanner and pointed it at Lyra. "According to this, she's not wearing her control shackles. That's a direct violation of prisoner protocols. I remove them." "You what?" Torres stared at him in shock. "Marcus, those shackles are the only thing keeping her from reading our minds and stealing military secrets. Without them, she has full access to her telepathic abilities. She hasn't used them against me." Phillips laughed harshly. "How would you know? Telepaths are masters of manipulation. She could be controlling your thoughts right now, and you'd never realize it." Marcus looked at Lyra, who was still pressed against the wall. Her hands were shaking, and he could see the fear in her purple eyes. She looked like a trapped animal, waiting for the predators to attack. "She's not controlling anyone," Marcus said firmly. "She's been nothing but respectful since she arrived." "That's exactly what someone under telepathic influence would say," Blake observed. She made notes on her scanner. "Captain Reed, I'm recommending that you be evaluated by our medical team. There's a good chance your judgment has been compromised." "There's nothing wrong with my judgment." "Then explain this," Torres said, pulling out his communicator. He activated a recording that showed Marcus's quarters from the hallway security camera. The timestamp showed it was from the day Lyra arrived. In the recording, Marcus could be seen disposing of the control device and removing her shackles. You destroyed military property and violated direct orders. Torres continued. That's not the behavior of the Marcus Reed I know. Maybe the Marcus Reed you knew died in the war. Marcus replied. Maybe I'm tired of following orders that don't make sense. Orders that don't make sense? Philip stepped closer, his voice rising. She's a coalition intelligence operative. She helped plan attacks that killed thousands of our people. And you're treating her like she's your girlfriend. The word hit Marcus like a physical blow. Was that what people were saying? That his relationship with Lyra was romantic? He glanced at her again and saw that she had heard the accusation too. Her face was flushed with embarrassment and fear. It's not like that, Marcus said. Isn't it? Blake was studying her scanner readings. According to the biometric data, you spend hours talking with her every day. You eat meals together. You've given her access to classified human literature and historical records. That goes far beyond normal prisoner supervision. She's not a prisoner anymore. The war is over. The war is over, but the security threats remain, Blake said coldly. We have dozens of coalition operatives in custody, and every one of them would kill you without hesitation if they had the chance. The fact that you can't see that proves you've been compromised. Torres moved to stand between Marcus and Lyra. I'm sorry, Marcus, but this has gone too far. We're taking her back to the detention center where she belongs. You're not taking her anywhere. This isn't a request. Colonel Blake has the authority to override your custody of any prisoner deemed a security risk. Marcus felt something change in the air around him. The temperature seemed to drop, and there was a strange pressure in his ears. He looked at Lyra and saw that her eyes were now glowing with a faint purple light. The shimmer around her hands was more pronounced than he had ever seen it. She's activating her abilities, Philip shouted, reaching for his weapon. She's trying to influence us. Stop, Lyra said, and her voice carried a strange resonance that seemed to echo inside their heads. I am not trying to influence anyone. I am trying to show you the truth. The air in the room began to shimmer, like heat waves. Suddenly, Marcus could sense the thoughts of the three officers as clearly as if they were speaking aloud. Torres was genuinely worried about his friend, but also jealous of the attention Marcus was giving to an alien. Phillips felt a deep hatred for all non-human species, born from losing his family in a coalition attack. Blake was calculating how she could use this situation to advance her own career. Stop reading our minds, Blake demanded, pulling out her own weapon. I am not reading your minds, Lyra replied calmly. I am sharing my memories with you. See for yourself what happened between Marcus and me. Suddenly, Marcus could see his own actions through Lyra's eyes. He watched himself dispose of the control device, remove her shackles, and treat her with kindness. But more than that, he could feel what she had felt during those moments. Her shock at his unexpected compassion. Her gradual realization that he genuinely wanted to help her. Her growing respect and affection for him as a person, not as her captor. The images shifted to show their conversations over the past weeks. Marcus saw himself through her perception, not as a conquering hero or a naive fool, but as someone struggling to find meaning after years of war. Someone trying to prove that humans could be better than their enemies believed. He felt her loneliness, her grief for her lost world, her fear that she would never again experience the beauty she had known on Altara. But he also felt her growing hope that maybe, with Marcus's help, she could build a new life among humans. The visions faded, and the room returned to normal. The three officers stood in stunned silence, their weapons lowered. Phillips looked sick, as if he'd seen something that challenged everything he believed about aliens. That's impossible, Torres whispered. She can't share memories like that. It's an advanced form of telepathy, Blake said, but her voice was shaken. She forced us to experience her perspective. She didn't force anything, Marcus said. She showed you the truth. Everything she shared with you actually happened. Torres holstered his weapon, but kept his hand on it. Even if that's true, it doesn't change the fact that she's dangerous. Those abilities of hers could be used against us. Could be, but won't be. Lyra spoke for the first time since the demonstration. I have no desire to hurt anyone. I just want to be left in peace. That's what they all say, Phillips muttered, but his earlier anger was gone. The shared memories had shown him something he couldn't ignore. Lyra was not the monster he had imagined. Blake was studying her scanner again. The readings show no signs of hostile intent or deception. Her telepathic activity is completely passive. That could be faked. Not these readings. They measure brainwave patterns that can't be consciously controlled. Torres looked back and forth between Marcus and Lyra, clearly struggling with what he had experienced. Marcus, even if she's not trying to hurt you, people are talking. They're saying you've been compromised. They're questioning your fitness for command. Let them talk. It's not that simple. Admiral Voss has been asking questions about your behavior. If this continues, you could face a formal investigation. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Admiral Voss was the head of Fleet Intelligence, a man who saw enemies everywhere and trusted no one. If Voss decided to investigate, it could destroy Marcus's career and put Lyra in serious danger. What kind of investigation? Blake answered. Full psychological evaluation. Interrogation under truth serum. Possibly a telepathic scan to check for alien influence. If they find any evidence that your judgment has been compromised, you'll be stripped of rank and she'll be transferred to a research facility. Research facility? They want to study her abilities, Blake said quietly. Find out how ethereal telepathy works, whether it can be replicated or defended against. The experiments would be extensive. Marcus looked at Lyra and saw the terror in her eyes. She had already suffered years of enslavement under the Coalition. The thought of being handed over to human scientists who would treat her like a laboratory specimen was too horrible to contemplate. There has to be another way. Torres was quiet for a long moment. There might be, he said finally, but you're not going to like it. What? Prove that she hasn't compromised you. Submit to a voluntary telepathic scan. Let our own psychics examine your mind and confirm that you're acting of your own free will. Marcus felt Lyra's hand touch his arm. When he looked at her, she nodded slightly. She was willing to let him undergo the scan to protect him, even though it would reveal the depth of their relationship to the military authorities. And if the scan shows I haven't been compromised, then you keep her, and the questions stop, Blake said. But if it shows any sign of telepathic influence, then I lose everything. Then you lose everything. Marcus looked at Lyra one more time. In her purple eyes, he saw trust, fear, and something else. Something that made his heart race and his palms sweat. Something that made the risk worth taking. Schedule the scan, he said. Marcus, Torres said quietly. Are you sure about this? I'm sure. But as the three officers left his quarters, Marcus wondered if he was making the biggest mistake in his life. The telepathic scanning room was cold and sterile, filled with machines that hummed with electronic energy. Marcus lay on the examination table, while technicians attached sensors to his head and arms. Across the room, Admiral Voss watched through a reinforced window, his face showing no emotion. Lyra sat in a chair beside the table, her hands folded in her lap. She had insisted on being present during the scan, claiming that her abilities might be needed to verify the results. The truth was that Marcus needed her there for moral support, though he would never admit it out loud. Are you ready, Captain Reed? Asked Dr. Yamamoto, the fleet's chief psychic investigator. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see through everything. As ready as I'll ever be. The process will take about an hour. You'll experience some discomfort as we probe your recent memories, but nothing dangerous. Just try to relax and let your mind open to us. Marcus nodded and closed his eyes. He felt the familiar tingle of telepathic contact. But this was different from Lyra's gentle touch. The human psychics were like hammers compared to her delicate fingers, pounding through his thoughts with little regard for subtlety. The scanning began with his earliest memories of Lyra. Marcus relived the moment he first saw her in the detention cell, chained and broken. He felt again his revulsion at being given another person as a reward, his decision to free her from the energy shackles. The psychics pushed deeper, examining every conversation he had shared with Lyra. They dissected his motivations, looking for any sign that his thoughts had been influenced by alien telepathy. Marcus felt exposed and violated as strangers rifled through his most private moments. Interesting, Dr. Yamamoto murmured. His emotional responses to the subject are very strong, but they appear to be entirely natural. No signs of external manipulation. The probe moved his feelings about the war and his role in it. Marcus was forced to relive battles he had tried to forget, friends who had died under his command, decisions that had cost lives. The psychics were looking for any change in his moral compass that might indicate alien influence. His guilt about the war is genuine. Another voice said, classic post-combat trauma. Nothing unusual there. But then the scan reached deeper memories, things Marcus had never shared with anyone. His childhood on Earth before the war, his dreams of exploring the galaxy in peace, his fear that humanity was becoming as cruel as their enemies. The psychics examined these hidden thoughts with clinical detachment. He has a strong moral center, Dr. Yamamoto noted, possibly stronger than average. His decision to show mercy to the alien appears consistent with his core personality. As the scan continued, Marcus became aware of something else in his mind, a warm presence that felt familiar and comforting. It was Lyra, somehow sharing the experience with him. She wasn't influencing his thoughts or hiding anything from the investigators. Instead, she was simply being there with him, providing comfort during the invasive procedure. "Wait," one of the technicians said. "I'm detecting secondary telepathic activity. The alien is making contact with the subject." "Should we stop the scan?" Dr. Yamamoto asked. "No," Marcus said quickly. "She's not doing anything wrong. She's just being supportive." Through their connection, Marcus felt Lyra's amusement at his description. Supportive was such a human word for something that couldn't really be translated. She was sharing his burden, taking some of the pain of the memory probe into herself so he wouldn't have to bear it alone. The psychics continued their work, but now they were also monitoring Lyra's telepathic activity. They could see exactly what she was doing, how she was helping Marcus without influencing his thoughts or memories. "Remarkable," Dr. Yamamoto whispered. "She's acting as a psychic buffer, absorbing the discomfort of the scan without affecting the results. I've never seen technique like this before." The scan reached its deepest level, probing Marcus's subconscious fears and desires. Here, in the places he barely understood himself, the psychics found what they were looking for. His feelings for Lyra were laid bare, exposed for a clinical examination. Marcus felt shame wash over him as his deepest secret was revealed. Somewhere during the past weeks, his protective feelings for Lyra had grown into something more. He cared for her not just as a fellow victim of war, but as a woman. He was attracted to her intelligence, her grace, her quiet strength. He had fallen in love with an alien, and now everyone would know. "The subject has developed romantic feelings for the alien," one of the technicians reported. "But these feelings appear to be entirely natural. No signs of telepathic manipulation or artificial emotion implantation." Through their connection, Marcus felt Lyra's surprise at this revelation. She had known he cared for her, but she hadn't realized the depth of his feelings. Her own emotions were suddenly visible to him as well, a mirror of his own confusion and attraction. Both subjects are experiencing genuine emotional bonding, Dr. Yamamoto observed. This is fascinating from a xenopsychology perspective. The scan finally ended, and the technicians began removing the sensors from Marcus's head. He sat up slowly, feeling drained and exposed. Lyra reached out and took his hand, her touch providing immediate comfort. Admiral Voss entered the room, his expression unreadable. "Doctor, what are your findings?" "Captain Reed shows no signs of telepathic influence or mental manipulation," Dr. Yamamoto reported. His decisions regarding the alien prisoner appeared to be the result of his own moral convictions and, more recently, genuine emotional attachment. Emotional attachment? "He's in love with her, sir. And based on the telepathic readings we detected during the scan, the feeling appears to be mutual." Voss stared at Marcus for a long moment. "Captain, do you understand the implications of what the doctor just said?" "Yes, sir. You formed a romantic relationship with a former enemy operative. That raises serious questions about your judgment and your loyalty to humanity." Marcus stood up, still holding Lyra's hand. "Sir," with respect, My loyalty to humanity is exactly why I treated her with compassion. If we become the same kind of oppressors that the Coalition was, then we've lost more than just a war. Pretty words, Captain, but feelings can be dangerous things. How do I know that your attachment to this alien won't compromise your duties? Before Marcus could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red, and the intercom crackled to life. All personnel to battle stations. Unknown ships approaching the station. Repeat, unknown ships approaching. Voss immediately headed for the door. Captain Reed, you're with me. Doctor, keep the alien under guard. Sir, Marcus said quickly, Lyra might be able to help. If these are Coalition ships, she could provide valuable intelligence. Absolutely not. She stays here under guard. Marcus looked at Lyra, seeing the determination in her purple eyes. She squeezed his hand once, then let go. Go, she said quietly. Do your duty. Marcus followed Admiral Voss to the command center, where chaos reigned. The main display showed 3 ships approaching at high speed. They were Coalition design, but they weren't broadcasting any identification codes. Sir, reported Lieutenant Davis from the communication station, the ships are hailing us. They're demanding the return of someone called Lyra of Altara. Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. Somehow, someone had tracked Lyra to the station. But who and why now? Are they Coalition military? Voss asked. Negative, sir. The ships appear to be privately owned, possibly mercenaries or bounty hunters. On the main screen, the image of an alien appeared. He was tall and pale, with features similar to Lyra's but harder, more angular. When he spoke, his voice carried the same musical quality as hers. I am Kale of Altara, the alien said. You are holding one of our people against her will. Return Lyra to us immediately, or we will take her by force. Voss turned to Marcus. Did you know about this? No, sir. Lyra never mentioned anyone coming for her. But even as he said it, Marcus wondered if that was true. Had Lyra somehow contacted her own people? Was this rescue attempt something she had planned all along? The alien ships are powering weapons, Davis reported. They're demanding immediate compliance. Voss was about to respond when another voice cut through the communication system. It was Lyra, somehow accessing the station's intercom from the medical bay. Kale, stop, she said. I am not being held against my will. The alien on the screen looked shocked. Lyra? Sister, we have come to rescue you from the humans who enslaved you. I am not enslaved. I am here by choice. That's impossible. The humans are conquerors, destroyers. They would never show mercy to a Coalition operative. Marcus watched the conversation with growing understanding. Kale was Lyra's brother, probably one of the few survivors from her homeworld. He had come to rescue her based on what he believed to be true about humans. Kale, Lyra continued, there's much you don't understand. Not all humans are what we were taught. Some of them are capable of great compassion. You have been brainwashed. I have been shown kindness by a man named Marcus Reed. He freed me from my chains and treated me as an equal. He risked his career to protect me. Marcus felt a warm spread through his chest at her words. Despite everything that had happened, despite the invasion of his privacy during the scan, Lyra was defending him to her own people. The human you speak of, Kale said slowly. He is there. I'm here, Marcus said, stepping up to the communications console. And Lyra is telling the truth. She's free to leave with you if that's what she wants. There was a long silence. Then Kale's expression softened slightly. You would let her go? Even though she has value as a prisoner. She's not a prisoner. She's a person who deserves to make her own choices. Another voice came through the intercom, and Marcus realized that Lyra had somehow made her way to the command center despite the guards. She walked up beside him, her presence immediately calming the tension in the room. Kale, she said, looking at the screen, I want to stay. Stay? With the humans? With Marcus. I love him, brother, and he loves me. The silence that followed seemed to last forever. Everyone in the command center was staring at them, processing this unprecedented declaration. a human and an alien, openly declaring their love in front of military commanders and enemy ships. Finally, Kale spoke. If this is truly your choice, sister, then I will respect it. But know that you will always have a home with our people if you change your mind. Thank you, Kale. That means more to me than you know. The alien ships powered down their weapons and moved to a safe distance. The immediate crisis was over, but Marcus knew that the real challenges were just beginning. Admiral Voss turned to face them. Captain Reed, in light of recent events, I'm reassigning you to the diplomatic corps. Earth needs someone who understands alien psychology to help negotiate with a former coalition species. Marcus looked at Lyra, who smiled and nodded. And the alien? She'll serve as your cultural advisor, if she's willing. I'm willing, Lyra said immediately. 6 months later, Marcus and Lyra stood on the observation deck of the diplomatic vessel Harmony, watching as the first joint human-alien colony took shape on the planet below. Their love had become a symbol of hope for peaceful coexistence between species. Marcus took Lyra's hand, feeling the familiar warmth of her touch. The war was truly over now, replaced by something better. Something built on understanding rather than conquest, on love rather than fear. Do you ever regret staying? He asked her. Lyra smiled and leaned against him. Never. You unchain me from more than just those energy shackles, Marcus. You unchain me from hatred and despair. How could I regret that? Together, they watched the future being built, one choice at a time,